Georgia. I'm Program Coordinator of the Research and Policy Forum on Climate Change and Environment at the Issam Institute. We're delighted to have Professor Saadeh here with us. This is the second lecture that Professor Saadeh is giving on seawater intrusion in Beirut. He gave another one last year as part of the program on climate change. He's giving it again this year because we felt that we needed to know a little bit more about this topic, and at the same time, our program has more and more climate change professors at AUB working on together as part of a consortium of different faculty members. Today's lecture is about seawater intrusion in Greater Beirut, current situation and correlation to climate change, 2004-2008. Professor Saadeh used to be a professor here at Oceanography in the Department of Geology. He is now a consultant to the Litani Water Authority. He received his PhD in Hydrogeology at RWTH Aachen University in Germany. In his doctoral thesis, he focused on seawater intrusion in the Greater Beirut area and its impact on water quality. He is currently a consultant at the Litani Water Authority. He was also project manager of the Litani Water Quality Management Project from 2004 to 2005, a project funded by USAID. Currently, Dr. Saadeh is also teaching at the University of USEK, Université Saint-Esprit de Kaslik, and his interests are in hydrogeology, seawater intrusion, and its implications on groundwater quality. Without further ado, Dr. Saadeh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. I have to admit, I feel a little bit anxious. Last time I gave this, Beirut fell under siege. So I hope it's not the case this time. Anyways, I thank you all for. It's a privilege here for being in front of you, taking the time to listen to my. Shall I call it pet project that I've been working on for the last 4 years as part of my PhD dissertation. So let's dig right into it. This is a very simple, almost childish representation of what sea intrusion is really like. Fresh water mixing with seawater, and please, all through the presentation, do keep in mind that this is very simplistic. In reality, it is never like this. The interface is never well cut, as it is here, and it is rarely horizontal. Usually it is a lens. You will see it in an upcoming figure. So, why is it such a problem? Drinking water, irrigation, and construction. So it has a sort of a three-pronged weapon. It renders drinking water almost unpotable. For irrigation, there are also standards that roughly set it at the same limit of drinking water. And ironically, even for construction, when we want to mix freshwater concrete, there's a standard, I believe ASTM C94, which stipulates that practically the water that we use for mixing concrete has to be as good as drinking water. And this is, from my experience, this is rarely the case in Lebanon. So salinity has three impacts, if you like. This is more or less what is happening during seawater intrusion. The interface, as you notice here, is oblique, and this is taken from the United States Geological Survey, and the interface rarely is clear-cut. It is sometimes hundreds of meters thick. We call it a mixing zone. It could actually extend to several kilometers, but for the sake of simplicity, the interface usually looks something like this, with fresh water sitting on top of the denser salt water. Now, with its it's pertinent to mention here that there is a principle among hydrogeologists known as the Geiben-Herzberg relation. One is Dutch, the other is German. And what they said simply is that for every foot of groundwater above the sea level, there are 40 feet of fresh water below sea level. What that means, in fact, is that in reverse order, if we drop, for some reason, the water table here, if we drop it 1 meter or 1 unit, the interface actually will rise 40 times. And this is theoretical. It is rarely this. It could be anywhere between 20, sometimes to 40. But all we have to do is over-abstract and disrupt the natural balance by dropping this water table just 1 meter, and this will rise 40 times. So this is how serious things are when we talk about saltwater intrusion and over-abstraction. Seawater contains about 20,000 milligrams of chloride. This is the case with the Mediterranean. A mixing of only 1% would triple the groundwater salinity, while a 5% mixing would increase salinity to over 1,000 milligrams per liter in chloride. There, 1999. Over 1,000 milligrams per liter. Remember, for drinking water it was 250. For irrigation, same. And for mixing water, it's not more than 500, usually the case. So a 5% mixing would render it useless. A contribution of 2% actually is just enough mixing for public supply according to the US EPA. Makes it totally unsuitable for anything, according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency. And this is according to Barlow, 2003. Now please, all through the presentation, keep this in mind, the 2%, which is for me the critical limit. These are some of the wells that I sampled throughout my dissertation between 2004 and 2007. Different colors represent different wells spread all over Greater Beirut. They were strategically sampled, and as you notice here, for instance, the salinity that we have in some of these wells is mind-boggling, reaching 7,000 milligrams per liter. Now, this is salinity. Convert that into chloride. It's roughly a rule of thumb. It would be a little bit more than half of that. Still, for chloride, you're talking about, for this well, for instance, if it's in the 6,000 milligrams per liter, you have chloride ranging anywhere between 2,500 and 3,000 milligrams per liter. And this is the type of salinity that we are dealing with in our water wells in Greater Beirut, unfortunately. Okay. I don't think I'm going to answer that. This is the GIS representation. What we did here is we took a satellite image of Greater Beirut, so superimposed these values on top of it, and what we got is a comparative figure between August 2004 and exactly 1 year later. These numbers here are chloride values for different wells. So you can see here we have somewhere in the range of 20 different wells, and this one here, very close to the airport, is the one with the highest chloride values. Exactly 1 year later, just 12 months, that value jumped from 2,000, I believe, 2,000 and something to 5,000 in just a span of 12 months. And using GIS, geostatistical analysis, you can notice here that we have sort of a front here, mixing front, if you want. The highest chloride values in this area close to the airport, and this is, as you already know, this is what we call in Arabic the Dahi area. Very, very highly salinized water wells, sort of moving from a north-south westerly direction into a northeasterly orientation. Last Beirut, there is considerable salinity, especially around this one here. This is in Khalid al-Khayyat, 2,500, extremely high. AUD, 900 still. This is above drinking and irrigation standards, and even for concrete. But the least affected areas in Greater Beirut extend to the north, the Bayi-Jaridi area. So, if we were to break it down into the three municipalities which do exist in Greater Beirut, the Beirut proper municipality, the northern municipality, and Ba'ath municipality here. Obviously, the Ba'ath municipality would be the one most affected by this phenomenon of seawater intrusion. Second is Beirut, or Ras Beirut, and least of all would be the northern municipality. Now, Lebanon's population is about 5 million. We don't have any exact numbers. Beirut's population is around 1.5. So we're talking about a third of Lebanon's population is crammed into Greater Beirut, into a 135 square kilometer area. This places a tremendous burden on our water resources. Now, the main causes of the groundwater overexploitation. I tackled it initially from this point of view. Seawater intrusion for me was directly a consequence of overexploitation, or as you commonly know as overpumping. Anthropogenic, it is lack of the national water metering encouraging tampering. Network loss is estimated at more than 50%. These are anthropogenic causes. This is directly what's causing today, right now, as we speak, the reason why we are relying so much on groundwater. First of all, we're not getting enough water from our networks. And second of all, they make it so easy for us to tamper with our, as you call in Arabic, skura, iyarat al-mai. It makes it so easy for us to tamper with our water supply. And this actually all is a major contributing factor to seawater intrusion. Of course, there's a climatic factor as well, which we're going to talk about right now. So it's not only anthropogenic. Oops. There's also climatological. Now this is terra incognita. It's a little bit hazy because to start with, we don't have much information on the climate changes affecting Lebanon. Unfortunately, I bought this book and I got it 2 weeks ago. It's entitled Climatic Changes and Water Resources in the Middle East and North Africa. It's been very helpful. There are about 65 different articles in here. 4 or 5 of them are concerning Lebanon. And most of them here agree that there is an increasing trend, meaning that precipitation is decreasing, annual temperature is increasing, and most would agree that there is sea level rise anywhere above 3 millimeters a year. Again, this is the biggest problem I faced during my research. There was no enough available data. There wasn't even a monitoring program in place. So I had to practically start from scratch. So these are 3 climatological factors which directly influence seawater intrusion as well. 1, 2, 3, as well as the anthropogenic ones we discussed earlier. Climatological. one of the articles here says something about the Hadley cell. Try to make it as simple as possible. The Hadley cell is a feature that exists over the equators. North, there's one to the north of the equator, one to the south. Now, one of the articles here is saying that there's a shift forwards in one of the Hadley cells. And these Hadley cells is actually a low pressure system. It is, yes, a low pressure system. And this was actually said by a German authority here, by Schoenweis in 2008. And what he is saying is that this cell is actually shifting northwards, and it is now probably in the vicinity of the Middle East, Lebanon specifically, and this will be a major player in the climatic change that we will be experiencing from now on. And what this means is that we're going to be having less precipitation every year. We're going to be having higher temperatures as a consequence. The trend in precipitation in Lebanon since the 60s is in decline, with an average drop of approximately 12% in precipitation over the last 50 years. The average discharge of rivers is also declining. It's about 23% for the past 40 years. Snow cover has declined from 2,220 square kilometers to less than 2,000. This will be zero. Please forgive me. And finally, aquifer discharge. We know that through pumping in wells have also decreased by more than 20% for our main formations. These are the Jurassic and the Cretaceous formations. Now, all of these put together mean one thing, that yes, we are experiencing climatic change. Yes, most likely it is getting warmer. And all of this means one thing, that seawater intrusion will be affected or even exacerbated by climatic changes, not just anthropogenic in the first place. Now finally, because I'm a consultant for the Litani River Authority, and I have been for the last 4 years, it is mentioned in this book that the Karaun Lake, and this is actually, I'll take a moment here to explain to you, it is actually the only reservoir, man-made reservoir we have in Lebanon of its size. Now we have a Shadouf one, but it's actually only 10 million cubic meters of water. The Karaun Lake is actually 220, and it has been the only one of its kind, was built back in the 60s. Now satellite images indicate that the lake has shrunk in surface area by 15%, and this is mentioned here in the book. So that got me thinking, and I went back and dug through the records of the Litani River Authority, and what I got was basically this. The numbers are in MCM, short for million cubic meters, from 69 to 2007. Now, nobody at the Litani River Authority had bothered to take a comprehensive look. So what I did is I just punched in these numbers and averaged them. And these numbers actually represent the peak values in capacity. So if we have, for instance, today, 2007, 2008, actually, right now, as we speak, we have something in the range of not more than 60 million cubic meters in the Karaun reservoir. Other times, they reached its maximum capacity of 220. Bear in mind that 40 million are always left in reserve. They are never touched. They are never used to produce, to generate electricity. They have to stay there. Maybe part of them is used for irrigation, but we never go below 40. Right now we're at 60, so we have a, if you want, we have a maneuvering room of only 20 million cubic meters. This is for 2008 right now. Notice, since its inception back in the 60s, there's been a dramatic decrease, gradual decrease, year by year, for the past 40 years. And sort of this confirmed what the authors have been saying in this book. Now, what do we do about it? So we do have seawater intrusion. It's exacerbated by us, mainly. Now we have an idea that, yes, it could also be exacerbated by the warming of the climate in the Middle East. What do we do about it? Now, the conventional recommendations can take something like weeks. We can dwell over them. Engineering techniques, management techniques, legislative approaches. There are innumerous, too many to mention. But basically, what we need to do first of all is try to start somewhere and create a monitoring system. Unlike what I had to deal with from the very beginning, there was no database, there was practically nothing. We need to start measuring. We need to start taking measurements of practically everything. Weather stations, tidal gauges, water table measurements, more accurate river discharge readings. We need to start pulling in all of this data into one sort of central office and come up with a much clearer idea of what is happening in Lebanon today. So these approaches are academic, we all know them, or know some of them, legislative, engineering techniques, management approaches, but in my humble opinion, we need more than that, and we need it right now. That's why I refer to it as triage. What we need right now is to address one of the anthropogenic reasons, and that was over 50% of network losses. We always have network losses, even in Europe, 10, 15, even 20% in some countries in Europe. But rarely does it reach such a number. Actually, it's more in the range of 65%, but I reduced it to 50 to keep it sort of conservative. But believe you me, it is more than 65% in Beirut in some of these places. They conducted that study only a few years ago, and it was scary when we got these numbers in. We need to address that. And second of all, we need to create a buffer zone along the coast of Beirut to prohibit any more drilling of wells and pumping. Now, I gave this presentation in Rome a year ago, and an interesting question came up. Is that it was posited in this way: why not start bringing in fresh water from various projects that are in the pipeline? Like, to mention a few, Nahr Ibrahim, Nahr Dimur, all these are projects in the pipeline, building dams and conveying water to Beirut. Why not start now? Why not start constructing desalination plants? Why don't we start building these plants all over the coast of Lebanon? But before we do that, my answer was back then, when you get a patient who's hemorrhaging as severe as we are, 65% in Beirut, the first thing you have to do before you give him any blood transfusion is to try to find out where he is hemorrhaging, and sort of just stop it as soon as you can. Only then can we begin to give him that transfusion. Only then can we begin to give Beirut its transfusion of fresh water with all those projects that we have shelved and gathering dust. This is one of them. The other immediate one is creating a buffer zone. We simply have to stop for the time being. We have to stop, or at least reduce abstracting water from a certain buffer zone along the coast of Beirut. Now that buffer zone is debatable. It can be established. It can be agreed upon. That's not an issue. But we have to stop issuing permits for wells. By the way, there are no statistics. I went to the office of the Beirut Water Authority. They have no idea how many wells we have in Greater Beirut. But believe you me, most of the numbers that I got are staggering. There are probably more than 15,000 wells, official and unofficial. Of course, the unofficial ones would be the bulk of that number, but it will be anywhere skyward of 15,000. This is how many wells we have in Beirut. Those need to be located, they need to be shut down, and no more well permits should be issued from now on until we address this problem. Now, before I get to that, remember that I said a 2% mixing is critical. That's critical for the United States Geological Survey. 2%. That will raise the salinity of water to roughly in the neighborhood of 1,000 milligrams per liter, right? You saw that some of the wells that I had sampled had actually chloride content in them in the range of 3,000, 4,000 milligrams per liter. So we are well beyond the critical 2% mixing of fresh and seawater, meaning that maybe it is too late, maybe there is nothing that can be done at this stage, but in any case, we have to be hopeful and we have to start somewhere. A visit recently that I had conducted, by the way, to the Ministry of Energy and Water. And they are under the impression, I don't know why, they are under the impression that we can just push the front back out to sea by re-injecting fresh water. This is an engineering possibility, yes, but not when you're well above a 2% mixing zone. That's usually done when you're below it. So at this stage, we would require huge amounts of fresh water to push that front back. And not only that, it would take a considerable length of time to do that. It is not that simple. We're not washing we're not washing our clothes here and just hang it out to dry and the chloride is gone. No, it's going to take huge amounts, which we don't have in the first place, and it's going to take, in some references, they say it's going to take even centuries when it's as bad as we have it in Lebanon. So, in my humble opinion, finally, I would like to say that we have to address these problems that we have in network losses. First thing, stop over-abstraction anymore. We don't want to increase the salinity, and only then can we start looking to alternate sources of fresh water. And with that, I don't know why it seems impressive, but there is a certain sense of urgency which, in these three quotations, there's a sense of urgency that's upon us. And somehow, I don't know why, for the people involved, at least in our government, it's still very, very lethargic. But it's, for me at least, it's a sign that we should get off our behinds and start doing something immediately and something drastic. We don't have time anymore, and we don't have the luxury anymore of just delaying this problem and debating it. We should get out there, start taking real measurements, and then decide accordingly what we should do. These people certainly agree. Okay? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Saadeh, for this very enriching analysis. The floor is open. Any questions?
Oh, I have another question.
No, we're recording, so it needs to go on.
do we care if we get saltwater intrusion in Beirut? In most of the world, saltwater intrusion is a problem if we're going to use that water for irrigation, if we're going to use it for animals, if we're going to use it even in industry sometimes, depending on the industry. And in many areas where they have big plains, clay, silt in their plains, the water recharge or recleaning of the salt water takes millions of years, especially if they have fossil aquifers, if you actually get saltwater intrusion to aquifers. In Lebanon, we have a very diffuse soil under Beirut. If we stop removing the water, we do not have fresh water to supply to the houses anyway. We know from AUB, because I live on AUB, that in the winter, the well gives us fresh water. In the summer, the well gives us salt water because there is less water pushing the water out. Frankly, in most of the world, I would agree with you. Saltwater intrusion, bad thing. In Beirut, I don't see why it's that bad.
It's because, I will start by answering, it's because we've gotten used to it. We've been living with it for the past 40 years, and it's become a certain, second nature for us. But let me tell you that with my experience, and I've spent considerable time as a concrete inspector, certified by the American Concrete Institute of the United States. So I've inspected a lot of concrete in this country, especially in Beirut. Most of the buildings and most of the apartments that you and I and every one of us live in is one way or another suffering from this effect of salt water. This is a direct consequence. And you're telling me, what do I care?
Okay, sure. I'll give you a word. Before you change the water, we're using sea sand for building without washing it.
As well?
Okay.
As well? So, tell me, how does it affect us directly? This is one way. Another way, I'll ask the ladies here. I mean, I know through my wife, she tells me the shampoo, something is not right with the water. Of course, because we know it, we feel it when it stops lathering. When the soap, when the shampoo stops lathering, this is an indication that we have salts and a high concentration of it in our water. In addition to that, I have to change my boiler at home roughly every 2 years. I have to change the pipes in the wall. This is one indication of salinity, corrosion. It shows. How many of you, if I ask you to raise your hands, how many of you have seen that problem firsthand? Corrosion in your walls, dampness. You had to change a pipe, and when you did change a pipe, it was practically powderish. You tell me, okay, you live with that? Sure. Yes, sir.
I have to say I do tend to agree with what you say, but in order to get rid of all the wells and boreholes, and I have to say I think 15,000 is rather an underestimate.
Yeah.
In order to get rid of them, you do have to provide everybody with a proper 24-hour pressurized water supply.
Right.
And the country is just not capable of that as things stand at the moment.
Right. This takes us back to the two immediate, as I call them, the two triage implementations. One of them is cut down the losses. We have it. This is something we can do right now, right here. Cut down our network losses of over 65%. Then we see where we stand. Maybe we'll just break even for now. But we need to address that.
Dr. Mark, I have the mic here, so probably, and I'm following up on this same issue as well. Thank you for a very enlightening presentation. I come from a health science background, so I'll be biased towards the health of people. Following up on the issue that was just raised, would it be better before recommending banning any permit for digging an artesian well to have a preliminary assessment, a happen assessment of the impact it will have on the people that are using them. So from a health perspective, also from a livelihood perspective, how are they using this water, for what purposes, etc. And then we can have a enlightened decision, we can have an evidence-based decision that this will take us this way or that way before recommending any decision of that sort, I would say.
I agree. This is one way of going, definitely. But being on the field, there's so much for me to deal with information, because I was in the field for 5 years, going from well to well. I did this on a monthly basis. Every month I would survey all those wells, get all that water sample in and test it by myself. So there's such a wealth of information here that I obviously cannot cram into this, that from my personal experience on the ground, some of these wells were actually government wells. And they are, one of them, an infamous one, if I may refer to it, is in Greater Beirut. And this is a government well that's pumping water to households. And there is a feedback from those people telling them, listen, the water, something's wrong with the water. Okay? Yet, we still go on delivering that water to households. This is my humble experience on the ground, you know.
I think that you are exaggerating the losses. This is not loss. It's more a non-revenue. Maybe we have the 20 or the 25%, but the other part is used by people, and you cannot base on this 50% or 65%, as you say, because it's an assumption. And I think that it's not 50% losses; it's 25 plus non-revenue water, which is used after all by the people.
Losses, let's be very clear about it. Losses is actually water seeping out of the conveyor. We're not talking about tampering.
Because if we have losses, it's pipes under pressure, and you can see it on the road or on the street, and it's not so big. I mean, when you are talking about 50%, it's about 100 cubic meters a day.
I have, Mr. Bassam, me and you, we go way back, and I have an extreme lot of respect for you. But the 65% is not guessing. It is a report actually which is classified, and it was. I cannot even reveal the consultant who gave me that data because it is confidential. It belongs to the Beirut Water Authority or even the Ministry of Energy and Water. I'm not sure which party holds that right, but I have it referenced properly in my PhD dissertation. It was conducted extensively for the last several years all over Beirut, and what they did is they used to cut off network sections, they used to pump water, pressure meter here, and they would estimate the losses. And they did that for a lot of sections. And I am privy to that report. In that report, it states in some places as high as 65%. Who is right? Is it more? Is it less? This is debatable. But I wouldn't put something like that in my dissertation if I wasn't sort of certain of it to a certain extent. What's the difference? No, Beirut. No. It was actually done by a subcontractor on the Beirut network. And in some places, I know where they even pointed out where some of these tremendous leaks are in some roads, in some sectors of Beirut.
So it's official.
It is official.
Not well broadcasted.
It is not broadcasted, absolutely.
So I have another question.
It is not broadcasted. It is not broadcasted. It is not broadcast. It is official in a way that the party, I think, Water Beirut Authority or the Ministry of whatever, they have that report, and I think they have addressed the problem since then. Wherever we have those leaks, the Beirut Authority has addressed the problem by fixing.
Sorry, my question is just a candid question. I'm just very new in this area, and we support some European Union reforms on the systems, not really on the technical aspect, but could be is what you are suggesting as two main complementary problem solutions.
Since all other authorities, including the Litani River Authority, is under their tutelage, including the Beirut Water Authority. So I would address that ministry in tackling this issue first of network losses. Whether they're 65, 50, 40, the important thing here is not the numbers, it is action. We should begin to address them. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you for the presentation. I have a comment on this question. First, I would like to comment about the database. I can only support the creation of a national database of water, including precise measurements of discharge, precipitation. You showed us some results about coming from the book. You told us about the increase and decrease in precipitation. Although I've heard the opposite thing in other publications, so that it would be good for a national institution to start gathering such kind of information. That is very important. Anyway, but talking about database and data, can we go back to your first slide showing the Beirut area? Please.
The GIS?
Yes, GIS. So the idea is data is important in order to start assessing our. That's it. I'm surprised to see you're talking about seawater intrusion, and I'm surprised to see that the red dot, the red patch showing the seawater intrusion, which has the highest chloride concentration, is based on only one measurement. So if we want to be able to understand the data and the situation, we need to have more than 1 mile.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So I'm surprised that you have presented just one. Is that the only data you have on this area?
No,
knowing that this is the highest concentration of wells and population, etc.
No.
And the second question is the seawater intrusion. We know, as I'm a geologist, and I know that we have different aquifers, and we may have some deeper aquifers that are not included yet. So, do you have any idea about which of these aquifers are you aiming, or is the population
tapping? Thank you. Yeah. Excellent question. It's you reminded me of my professor in Germany. He said, when we first did this, these are the older versions, by the way. He said, we need more wells. And Professor Assaf here is my co-advisor. He can attest to that. So what we did is that it was a dynamic process. We started out with these wells. I got that question, and so I had to modify it. And I went back into the field, and I had to increase these number of wells from about 20 initially to more than 50. And by doing that, I focused the remaining 30 on these areas. Then I knew which areas I should look out for and which ones I should sort of, just monitor as before, status quo. So it was a dynamic process for me. It wasn't fixed. I don't underwent that for the 20 wells by any stretch of the mind. It was a dynamic process. We had to continually modify this simple monitoring program until finally we had over 50 wells. And the presentation for that, I'd be glad to share it with you. It's in my publication. It's online, by the way. My publication in Germany is online, so all you have to do is download it from the university site.
Can you give us the website?
Sure. When we're finished. So you can see that there's an increase in wells, but they all, anyways, they all pointed to the same thing, that we have, in fact, we are certain of one thing, that we have intrusion here. It's not surprising, because this is where we have the highest density of population in the Dahi area. And it wouldn't be surprising that this is where we have the most wells, people abstracting. And most of these wells, by the way, the second question is, which aquifers are we tapping? Of course, we're tapping the shallow aquifers of Beirut, not the deeper ones, even the Jurassic. The shallow aquifers, mainly in Beirut, it would be the Cretaceous and the Quaternary, so C4 and other aquifers. These are the ones we're tapping. I don't want to go too deep, because if I go any deeper, then it would defeat the point of studying seawater intrusion in deeper wells, why so? Because the ones that I have that are very deep indicate no one is going to drill a 1,000 meter, for instance, well, if you can drill a 200-meter well and get some salty water.
Yes, as a national system, as a national authority that will be dealing with bringing good quality water to the population of Beirut, that would be a very valuable information to know. Do we still have deeper aquifers that are still preserved from seawater intrusion or not? If not, then we should start thinking of desalination. And you told us, you depicted the situation as if it was hell, and that we would never be able to take back the salt front from the deep aquifer. So knowing that deeper aquifers are reserved or not, this is a very important information.
But I just said that they are preserved.
They are preserved.
They are preserved. I just said that deeper wells indicate that you have fresh water, probably untouched by this phenomenon of seawater intrusion. But even knowing that fact, I'd leave it at that, and I would go to the surface water resources that are discharging into the sea anyway. I don't want to, as a hydrogeologist, I don't want to go any deeper, and I don't want to drill any more water from the ground. I'd rather tap into all of these coastal rivers, which are, by the way, perennial, and they're just flowing into the Mediterranean Sea. Why not do something about that instead of looking underground? Let's just give our aquifers a break for a while. Let's start looking at other resources, surface water resources, including Nahr Ibrahim, which is 30 kilometers from here. South, Nahr Dimur, same place. We have ample sources from these two rivers to supply Lebanon, Beirut's needs for quite some time. Just let's give the aquifers a break for a while.
Hello, I'm Valia Zohari, and I work with the Society for the Protection of Nature in Lebanon. Thanks for the interesting presentation, but I had a comment, and maybe I'm concerned like Dr. Rima Habib about the environmental and the people's aspect. And I think it's interesting to study the effects of seawater intrusion as an indicator of climate change and all of this. But I think that there are so many other indicators or important aspects that we need to study, and which are correlated to people's life, because usually people are interested with the things that affect their livelihood. And I found that in Lebanon, the general perception of water resources that we have plenty of water. And I think that we first need to work on awareness. It's very important. And we need to start telling people our issue in water and the effects of climate change on their maybe livelihood, maybe agriculture. Like in the area where I work on, I find that farmers are so much affected by the effects of climate change. So maybe we need to assess such effects like deforestation, desertification, maybe the effects of change in seasonal variation, and such things are indicators. And I think one of the things that can help us are like using biodiversity as indicator of climate change effects. Like, for example, I know that birds are very sensitive species to climate change. So maybe we need to do much more monitoring about that. Because if we want to come to people and to tackle the issue of seawater intrusion, they wouldn't be very interested about it because they think that it doesn't have a direct effect on them. But whenever you start dealing with things that directly affect their livelihood, I think it's much more important for them. So I think we need to further assess such effects more. Thank you.
I totally agree. Now it's all up to you how we take this further. But my main recommendation is and was a database. Let's start collecting information. Now, ironically, we don't even have tidal gauges in Lebanon. So how do we really assess the potential for sea, if there is any, even in the first place, sea level rise in Lebanon? How do we do that? If we don't even have tidal gauges. So this is again probably a dissertation subject for a potential student, perhaps one day. How do we know if sea level is rising in Lebanon? Whether it is actually related to climate change or is it probably static or something? You know, the plates are just bouncing up or down. How do we know that? We don't. Nothing. We have nothing. It is not hell. Okay. But we have nothing. No tidal gauges. Is it rising? Maybe it's not. Maybe some of you one day is going to come back to me and tell me, no, it's actually in Lebanon the sea level is dropping. Maybe. I don't know. The only way to know is to start doing something about it. Install tidal gauges at least along the coast of Lebanon.
It's a cheaper way. Buy it from USGS satellite ultimately.
ما في شيء اسمه resolution للبنان.
For Israel, you buy it from the US, they take it for Israel.
It's too small. I hope Professor Assaf from the Department of Engineering agrees with me. The resolution Lebanon is too small.
Our neighbors, there are some international programs that install tidal gauges all the way. It's an application for earthquakes and tsunamis.
Great. So next time they tell me, is it rising in Lebanon? I'm telling them, wait, I'm going to check with our neighbors in Israel. Okay, sure. Okay, that's one way of doing it. But I think it's about time, we stand on our own 2 feet and say, hey, we don't need to look at Turkey, Cyprus is rising, Israel is rising. Right, I know. We don't know that. But how can we really take the necessary steps to do that? We can always keep borrowing information and imitate. But we can choose to be good imitators or bad imitators. It's really all in our hands. Yes?
Hi. I'm Wolfgang Hager, Policy Advisor in USAID. 2 remarks. First, when you answered the question about construction, you were, I think, a bit brief because you weren't understood properly how serious the problem is. So may I, in my words, say that most of the buildings made of concrete in the city are rotten. They're rusted through. The steel reinforcing bars are rotten inside the wonderful looking smooth concrete.
Yeah.
The smallest earthquake will have the city tumbling down. And the least we can do is when we rebuild our stock, use clean water. So it's very, very important to get away from using this sort of water for construction. Incidentally, the very quality buildings you see along the seafront of the Centre-Ville are supervised by insurance companies drop by drop, and by people like him when he's younger, to make sure that the concrete is properly mixed with clean water and not salt water. But most of the rebuilding that's gone on after 2006 is done with very, very dangerous salt concentration. The second one is more my own field. It was suggested by you that the Ministry of Energy and Water is the place to go with the story. Now, I've never seen a ministry, and I've seen many in this country, as dead and lifeless as this ministry. And you go in there and you think there has been a nuclear attack and there's no life left. And you have to, it is really, really a harrowing experience to visit this ministry. Now the place, this is, to my mind, a question of a national strategic investment that should be treated by CPR. Because if there's a business in Lebanon that flourishes, it's real estate, the future of the country, in a sense, is at stake from this rather technical issue of saltwater intrusion. It's much more important, much more dramatic than people might think. And therefore, it should be with the World Bank and the CBR together, putting this into country programming as a major investment project, done coherently, and then cost-benefit analysis downstream between fixing the pipes that leak and building plants. I've been asking for this since I came to this country. The first week I was here, I said, cost-benefit analysis. What does it cost to fix the leakage per cubic meters saved? What does it cost to build dams in the country per cubic meter? And I still would like to see that stuff. Thank you.
Hi. Completely unscientific question. I live in West Beirut, and our building has a well, and I know very well what it means to wash salt water. But I know also that the building does not allow anybody near the well. It's because they don't rely on water that comes from the government, the GRM or the GRM. So how can you reach a place to tell these people, we are going to cut off your well and we are going to give you water? The people are not going to believe you. And they're not going, sorry, but it's not going to happen. They are so attached to these wells that even salt water is better than you having them rely on the government. Right. So how do you get to them? How do you reach these people?
First thing that I recommend, like I said already, is that you minimize those losses, and one day people are going to realize when they open the tap, there's not just air coming out, there's water, and this will sort of start encouraging to rely less and less on wells. After that, I will go to step 2, which is starting to go around, checking on those wells, on the conditions, how deep they are, and assert on a one-by-one basis which ones need to be halted and which ones could potentially continue.
But did you find when you went on your field, did you find that people readily showed you their well?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's why I would cut those, minimize those losses, send water through the network with only, let's say, 10-15% if it's possible, and like I said, they will get used to it. When they open their taps, they have water, and sort of encourage them, maybe lower the tariffs, I don't know, sort of, and give them electricity, by the way, to turn on the pumps. Encourage them with all of these things, power and water, to stop relying. And once only that takes place, can we start looking at step number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Step number 2 being, of course, going around and halting wells that are not, shall we say, very, very healthy. It's not an easy task, but we have to start somewhere.
We need a strategy.
Yeah.
Let's take the question in the back.
It's not only in Beirut, it's all over Lebanon. And the problem of management of the water in Lebanon is bad. So do you think they will solve the problem in Beirut if they won't solve the problem in Lebanon?
Right.
Because, for example, in Matin area, you're going to provide water in Beirut, and already you don't have enough water for Beirut. The Matin area will have a problem. Right. So the big issue is the management of water in Lebanon.
Absolutely.
And solving it will help in solving the saltwater intrusion. Although I think it's not going to happen because salt is already diffused in the rock, and it's going to back diffuse again when you either pump or solve the problem, and it's not going to happen in our lifetime. So I think the management of the whole issue in Lebanon of water is better than solving only the saltwater intrusion in Lebanon.
I agree. I just have to comment that this phenomenon is also not just it is not just unique to Beirut. Indications probably hint. It's within my scope, but they hint. We have that problem in Tripoli, and we have that problem in other places perhaps as well. So we need to look at the bigger picture, which is beyond the scope of this presentation.
Let's take 2 questions, Fadi and then Dr. Waterbury.
Hello, Fadi Bishaya. I'm an urban planner. Actually, I was interested. I have it's just a small background. When I saw this map, is there any correlation? And of course, there must be, but I don't know if you've gone through it, Dr. Saadeh, between the density in Beirut and between the water wells. Because for what it seems to me is that we have geological and climatic reasons for why the sea intrusion is coming from the southwest, and then stopping between at the tip of the Ashafiya Hill and the Ras Beirut Hill. And then if we see an aerial view of Beirut, and we can see the concentration of the southern suburbs and of municipal Beirut and of the municipalities outside of Beirut, Har Tahrik and Gbeiri and Shiyah. I mean, is there a correlation between the number of people there and the frequency of using water and between this seawater intrusion? And thus, then this is my question. Seeing this not just from an environmental and from just a livelihood point of view, but from a national planning point of view, and then addressing this question within, as one of the audience has suggested before, as to CDR, as to integrate it with the national plan, with land use, with all these aspects. So this is my question. Thank you.
This is an excellent question. Please, again, I apologize. There is, again, be my guest to access the dissertation online and download it. There is a wealth of information there, and there definitely I tackled the problem of seawater intrusion from many aspects, whether it is anthropogenic, climatic, but I could not definitely in this lecture all presented here and now. But geologically speaking, I think that the gentleman would agree with me. Geologically, there is a factor, of course, depending on which aquifers are adjacent to the coastlines and which are retreated from the coastline. So there is a geological factor playing here, an important one, which is a contributor and an inhibitor of seawater intrusion. But I have not, for the sake of the cosmopolitan audience today, I have not wanted to deal with that. It is. From another aspect, is it also an anthropogenic in terms of density? Yes, it is, definitely. And as you can see here, which is very apparent, that even though there is we don't have numbers. We don't know how many are in fact living in Beirut. Is it 1.5? Is it 1.7? Is it 2? We don't know. But we do know, because we are all from this city, I'm supposing, that we have the highest concentration, population density in the southern suburbs of Beirut, Dahi. And this would mean more reliance on groundwater. So there is definitely a correlation here. As you go northwards towards Beirut and even Jabadid, it becomes less and less. So this is an indication. And that's all it is, an indication. But there are many factors which have finally come into play with these two figures, if you want, here. It's not just population density. There was geological consideration. There was climatic consideration. All of these came into play with these two figures. But definitely it has to do in a very big part to the population density which is found here around the airport.
So strategically, just to follow up, so it's not only a matter of recommending, maybe this is a short-term intervention of recommending, like, to stop issuing well permits.
Coastal buffer zone. Please, I want to be very specific here. I have to interject. Coastal, and I was very meticulous, coastal buffer zone. We cannot expect to just stop tapping into the groundwater, but at least a strip, a coastal strip, at least, I don't know, extending, this is something which is also beyond the scope of this dissertation, but it can be addressed. A strip of 1 kilometer away from the coast, stop issuing permits for wells in this coastal buffer zone.
Yes, but I just wanted to add that it might be this, but as well as probably also addressing this issue under a bigger and a wider issue, which is balanced, for example, development. So, because if more people are going to continue, on the long run, if more people are going to continue coming to Beirut, and we're only addressing the issue, not the roots of it. So that's why I'm trying, again, from my humble point of view, as a junior urban planner, to say that this might also this might work better if also addressed under development or under balanced development, not only under immediate environmental action that's concerned with livelihoods in Beirut.
If I understand you correctly, I hope so. I agree with you. That's why the panel who's going to take this and run with it, the government, and not only the government responsible, there should be a panel. It should include a myriad of experts, not just hydrogeologists. It's not just a hydrogeological phenomenon. We need urban planners. Professor Wolfgang Hager said, the Ministry of Energy and Water is a ghost town. It's not just that ministry. It's all the other ministries probably to a certain extent as well. Tanzim al-Mudani. Where is it? Where's Tanzim al-Mudani? Beirut has actually been, from a geological point of view, it has been cut off, isolated from the aquifers which lie underneath. That means not a single drop of rain which falls from the heavens actually manages to reach the aquifers which are directly underneath Beirut. They just bounce off the surface, whether it's concrete or asphalt, and then adios to the Mediterranean Sea. They have not even left, probably, I'm not an urban planner, we have the worst ratio of parks to asphalt concrete jungle in probably, if we don't rank the first, probably the second in the world. Where is this rain going to find its way to the ground? The last vestige we had was the Beirut River. And somebody there with a brilliant plan went and aligned it all with concrete. Why? I'm 40 years old, I've never seen a flood 20 meters high on both sides, concrete. What is it, the Amazon? They should have left it. They should have left it. So Beirut is totally isolated from the aquifers underneath.
Could I return to your observations on municipal losses? Where do they go? Do they not recharge?
Just into the ground, and it's a two-way street. Losses from the same spot, and then you have contamination back in. And this is why, personally, and from everyone I know, nobody drinks tap water in Lebanon, at least in Beirut. Nobody dares to drink that tap water. It's just going into the ground.
But it's recharging your surface aquifers, no?
It is surface aquifers, right. I would say that, yes. Absolutely. That's one way of recharging our aquifers.
Any more questions? Thank you, Dr. Saadeh.
Thank you.